This is the BEnergyAware Podcast. Hi, and welcome back to the BEnergyAware Podcast. Thanks again for joining me here. Your feedback is much appreciated, so please let me know your thoughts and suggestions so I can have them in mind when creating the future episodes. Get in touch with me through Instagram at BEnergyAware or through my website, BEnergyAware.com. And thank you so much for being here. Today's episode is part 2 of the top 10 countdown of 2020. So it's going to be episode number 5 to episode number 1. And so here they are. Number 5 is Boundaries and Self First. It's about 8 minutes long. Here it is. For this episode, I'm using another recording from one of my live group calls, where we talked about the importance of boundaries and self first. This episode is about knowing how to set good boundaries and about knowing how to take care of ourselves by putting ourselves first. There's also something about that we need to mention today is about internal boundaries. So let's say we make a promise to ourselves that we'll take care of ourselves in a certain way, in a certain situation, with a certain person, and we're gonna not allow them to do something, or we're not gonna go out of our way to please them or to make them happy and so on. They may challenge us, and we cannot actually blame them for crossing our boundary. They're just, it's a test if we're going to do this thing or not. If we did it over and over again, if it keeps happening, and if we keep doing it internally to ourselves, not honoring ourselves with that boundary, that promise that we set for ourselves, that we're going to take care of ourselves in a certain way, with certain people in certain situations, then what can happen is, we might actually attract a lot of people that might deliberately and knowingly cross our boundaries, because it would be just a mirror of that. It goes way deeper than that, and it always goes to our childhood. So let us all really intend to clear anything and let go of anything that would make anyone test us with our boundaries, cross our boundaries, knowingly find a place where they can try to cross that boundary where we are the weakest. Let's just clear that. Let's just let go of that. If there's anything in us, energetically, a belief or thought or feeling, maybe it's in our DNA. Maybe it wasn't even ours in the first place. Let's just let that go. And let's download what healthy boundaries are, what boundaries mean, and what their purpose is, the universal definition of it, that we know how to keep promises to ourselves, what that feels like, what that looks like, what it feels like to honor ourselves first. Definition of what that means, universal definition of honoring ourselves and honoring ourselves first. What does self first mean as well? Definition of self first. And if we have anything around that it's not okay to fight for what we feel is right, or what for our boundaries, to keep our boundaries, let's let that go. Anything that's in the way of us keeping our boundaries and keeping promises to ourselves, and keep and that we really know that it's okay to fight, and that's an internal fight, to really be present in each moment and know that we are worthy and deserving of fighting for our boundaries and for affirming them and keeping them, not removing them for someone else just because, I don't know, just because we like them, if nothing else, No pleasing others. Pleasing ourselves is fine. Again, it might be a thing, it might be a self first thing. What that feels like, what that looks like, and that it's okay. By pleasing ourselves, I mean meeting our own needs first. What that feels like, what that looks like. And any beliefs that are intended for us around that and boundaries for today, let them be downloaded for us right now. Couple of deep breaths. Again, we are worthy and deserving of having our needs met first. Couple of more deep breaths. Okay, great for the whole group to have this tonight. Boundaries and self first. So, how would the energetic perspective help us here? First of all, if we invite certain energies, like you've heard it being done in this recording, to assist us with setting our boundaries and keeping our boundaries, that in itself can make a huge difference in our day to day life. Also, letting go of any energies that might be in the way of us setting good boundaries and keeping our boundaries is a good thing to do. And then there's having a better overview when it comes to any situation by applying what we talked about in the last episode, by feeling into it. Or we could also say by consciously tuning into people and certain situations. This can help us be more prepared and allow us to set some good boundaries. This way we can go about our day and function at our optimum. If we are not able to set good boundaries, or not able to keep those boundaries, we are going to be getting drained energetically. Boundaries serve to protect our energy. For me, boundaries start with knowing myself and about being clear about what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with. And then it's about communicating that when situations arise, or preferably before any situations arise, so that I can skillfully avoid unpleasant situations. Sometimes we need to think ahead to avoid these situations and communicate in a timely manner before it's too late. To me, boundaries are primarily about me not stepping all over myself and about avoiding the inner conflict that comes as a result of breaking promises to myself and then having this mirrored back to me externally by people that break my own boundaries. If I can avoid the inner conflict, this helps me stay centered and on track and allows me not to lose any energy. Hope this episode helps you with setting and keeping your own boundaries. Okay, the next one, number 4, is how to stop overthinking. It sparked quite an interest, and no wonder. So here it is. A lot of highly sensitive people struggle with overthinking and with not being able to let go of their thoughts. It can be exhausting when our brain just keeps on spinning and spinning. And so, in this episode of the BEnergyAware Podcast, I will be talking about how to stop overthinking. Since I used to do this a lot myself, I will share from my own experience. With time, what I've learned is that overthinking and worrying about everything in my life that bothers me isn't actually helping. It's not helping me at all when I keep thinking and thinking on and on about things that bother me, and then I end up worrying and I deplete my own energy. I always get easily drained if I do this. So, what I found out for myself is that it's okay to let go of those thoughts, to allow myself to stop overthinking and worrying by reminding myself that that's not going to help me. And instead of grabbing a hold of every single thought and doing something with it, I've learned to let go of all those thoughts at least for 15 to 20 minutes during meditation, where I just focus on my breath. Doing this in the morning or in between any of my daily activities, for example, to get myself from work mode to relax mode, really helps. It's a great feeling to consciously step away from the thoughts spinning around in my head and just focus on breathing. And because of this, I generally feel much more relaxed. Another way I stop overthinking is by going for a run, or I just start dancing. And any type of sport normally does the trick. Being in nature helps as well. Looking at beautiful scenery and being surrounded by lots of green and lots of blue if I'm by a lake or an ocean. That really relaxes me more than anything else. Then also, listening to music helps me a lot. And when listening to music, I let go of not only my thoughts, but I also let go of some unpleasant feelings. And one other thing that I do is I consciously clear the energy of my thoughts. And I do that just by intending it. And then I focus on the breath and let those thoughts flow right through my head. And with my breath, I let go of them. At times I imagine that my thoughts are like a river that just flows nicely and continuously and steadily. And that helps me to calm down and to let go. In moments when we catch ourselves overthinking, it's good to have our go-to things that we can do to get ourselves out of that state. Hope some of what I've just talked about helps you as well to stop overthinking. Okay, next we have number 3, which is our biggest trigger. That one really got us thinking about our triggers. It's about 6 minutes long. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about our biggest triggers. If we know what those are, then we can prepare ourselves for possible situations that might arise when someone triggers us, be it their behavior or something they said, or even the energy that they bring or the energy that they project. But before going into the energetic side of things, I would first like to talk about what these possible triggers might be. So let's think about it for a moment. What triggers us the most? What totally sets us off? Not being heard or listened to? Not being respected? Not being acknowledged? Being disrespected? What would be our biggest trigger? Is it others putting stuff on us expecting us to resolve everything for them? Or is it when we're made to feel that our opinion is not important? Someone devaluing us? Someone undermining us? Or is it when someone crosses our boundary even when we've made it very clear? Or maybe it's when a person doesn't keep their word or their promise. What is it? What's the number one? What's your biggest trigger? Whatever it is, it's telling you about the energies that you still have inside of you that are coming to the surface to be let go of. In times when we are triggered, it is best to just observe ourselves, to observe how we're feeling and what we are thinking, and also to observe how we are responding to whatever is going on. Every triggering situation is an opportunity to have a better insight into ourselves and to have a better understanding of what it is that has a grip on us. Let's say, for example, that our biggest trigger is when someone treats us as if our opinion is not important. You know, those times when we feel that whatever we say, that it's just being dismissed and even ridiculed and laughed at, as if it doesn't matter at all. We try so hard to get our point across to express our opinion, and even voice our feelings. But it all seems useless, as if it's not really being received or understood. Instead, it's being taken for granted and harshly judged. It is exactly in those situations that we need to pay really close attention to mainly ourselves and how we are responding to the situation, both internally and externally. Internally, it's about paying attention to how we are feeling and what we are thinking in that moment. And externally, it's about paying attention to how we are behaving, what we are saying, and what we are doing. If we'd been exposed to the same harsh energies at any point in the past, especially when we were very, very young, we need to realize that we now have a chance to let go of these energies for good. How would we do that? This is where meditation helps. Through meditation, we can learn different tools that we can use to let go of the past. Tools that will help us be more centered and calm. And also the tools that will help us handle any situations and challenges and successfully overcome them. What works for me is taking the time that is needed to observe myself and to observe any daily situations that I go through, and then pinpointing the triggers and different energies that are causing those triggers. This helps me be much more prepared for any future situations that might arise. Figuring out how to better respond to something that normally triggers me makes a huge difference if something similar ever happens again. But not only that, I also dig deeper and unravel and unhook anything that needs letting go, so that I attract less of those kinds of situations in the future, or even none at all. There needs to be a willingness to let go of these old energies. We need to ask ourselves, are we ready to let go and start creating a new reality? For now, the most important thing to say is that whenever anything upsetting happens, it is an opportunity for applying what we've talked about so far in the last few episodes and in this one, so that we can live consciously while seeing everything through the energetic perspective. Next one is number 2, being a highly sensitive person with Nihan Sevinc. A lot of people listen to this one. It gives a really good insight into the life and perspective of a creative, highly sensitive person. This is a shorter 12-minute version of it. For the full episode, see the link in the description.
Enhancing the natural flow of life is something that I'm really curious about, and there are different ways that I explore this. I like exploring this through design and art and making installations that give people a sense of a more visceral sense of what they want more of in their lives and on our planet. I find that as a highly sensitive person, one of our strengths is tapping into the essence of things, because we feel deeply, and once we have healed enough and once we are in charge of our lives, this is what I realized about myself. Now I'm able to feel into the essence of something, because there's no other way for me to be in the world. And now I like sharing this with people by making beautiful designs, by designing a space, by making an installation, an artwork, and then through my writing, putting the essence, the energy of things into the words and sharing them with people. And then I also have some more specific projects. For me, I love collaborating with the earth, and I don't see any other way of being in the world for me. So it seems like this is something I should be following then. So it's all about looking at my skills and gifts, what comes really naturally to me without effort, and then really honing those skills and seeing, what else can I create? who else can I collaborate with? Look, being part of a beautiful symphony, I may just be a note in that symphony, but, being there and sharing that. And I'm passionate about the earth because I don't see any way of creativity and creation in this physical reality that we are in. So one of the things, and this will be an example of how something that I felt ashamed of in myself as a highly sensitive person, that now that I've shifted my perspective of it, is turning into a gift, which is it's always very easy for me to be in touch with plants and trees and the land. And I have a lot of creative ways of doing that, but it comes very naturally to me. I don't see it as creativity or imagination because this is just how I roll. So I go out to the park and the trees, and I group the trees, and I touch the roots of the trees with my roots. I don't know how else to put this, but it's not imagination. It's just I walk through there, and my body is this vessel that takes in all of that life and is in relationship with the trees. So I've always said hi to trees in my life and ask for their names when I move into a neighborhood, go introduce myself. And I'm also being a little ashamed of it. Or I was made fun of for this. Now I'm realizing this is actually something that kids really enjoy, that sense of wonder. Kids maybe until age 9, they still live in that state of wonder. And what really happens is whenever I go to the park, that's by my house, and I start making some nature art, kids come and they want to join and they want me to teach them. And it turns into this thing where we ask questions and we ask I wonder how we could talk to the tree. Let's ask the tree about what it thinks. Where should we place this nature piece? And the kids start talking to the tree. The kids start becoming aware of their own, or receiving validation that how they see the world is wonderful. And it's not only okay, but it's wonderful. We want to encourage more of that. So I am just right now looking for exploring different ways to share this in the world, because I'm realizing if we can be in touch with the earth and its beings on that level of intimacy, on that level of relationship, then what else is possible? How would we treat the planet then? How would we live our day-to-day life? So this is one of the projects, let's say, but I think it's an example of how what I thought was something really painful, a painful secret that I had to live with because it was so childish and it was so weird and it was so blah. Now I'm realizing, okay, it's 2020. Here we are. I don't think there's any more time for me to see this as a pain or as something to be hidden. I think it's time. We need the weird things,
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's really not a weird thing. For me, what I'm hearing is you're really connected to the nature, and you have your own unique relationship with the nature, very close one, and you want to share that, and then it will benefit many, starting with the children, with the kids. So it's wonderful for me to hear that, and I hope you do a lot of it. And
Thank you. And you see, this is what the sense of belonging is doing it to me, because if I was surrounded with people who didn't understand my experience as a highly sensitive person, what I ended up thinking was, oh, these things about me are wrong. And, some of those people could have been highly sensitive people, just not knowing their own gifts and having been told that they were wrong. I understand that. So I don't have resentment about it anymore. But there's something really beautiful when highly sensitive people come together and share all of this weirdness and realize this is actually quite beautiful. We all have our own ways. And maybe this thing about me isn't something that I should be ashamed of, that I should feel like it's a burden. Then I can get curious about, okay, I wonder, I wonder what other gifts that I have that I've seen as a burden in the past. I mean, can you imagine the level of change this can create in the world in such a joyful way, without a top-down, overpowering approach, but in a really, really beautiful way?
Yeah. So we've talked quite a bit about all these, things that relate to highly sensitive people today. So, any last thoughts in general? When you think about everything we've said today, and highly sensitive people, and how we are today, and looking into the future. Any last thoughts that you have on the subject of being a highly sensitive person?
My hope for all of us in the world is for all highly sensitive people for all of us to really accept ourselves and to really experience the beauty of who we are. And it will look different in everyone, so that we can become an example for everyone on the planet of what it is like to really be ourselves, because our gifts are needed, who we are is needed, our creativity is needed on the planet. So I see this as something that's more than just highly sensitive people. We all have what we need. I love how this is about coming to ourselves, becoming more conscious as highly sensitive people, and then the collaboration. That is the part that I'm really looking forward to. And I also have a question for you. Let me see how I can phrase this. I'm curious if there was one thing that a highly sensitive person right now who's listening, if there's one thing that you'd like them to feel and know at the end of this podcast, what would it be?
Well, what comes first is it just came as you were asking the question. It was just, if I could say one thing, is that we need to really trust ourselves,
Hmm.
and trust our intuition, and use our intuition to guide us. And if we're not used to that, well, we better start doing it. And yeah, and again, for me, it came down to having a really to nurture the relationship that I have with myself, in taking that time for myself, to be with myself, and to learn more about myself, and to talk to myself, and to go deep, and so all that, what it made me uh, be aware of, and what it enabled me to actually build that trust, and to start using my intuition more and more, and then to trust it, and to then, as a consequence, even act on that intuition more and more with time, because it's not just about, you know, spending time with ourselves, nurturing that relationship with ourselves. Then it's not about deciding to use our intuition. Yes, it's a good thing, but we get the information and then we doubt, and then we don't trust it. And then, or we were too fearful to act on it. And so this is where all the tools and everything that I've ever been doing and saying comes together. It is exactly that moment that we decide, yes, I'm going to do this, and it's a good thing, and I'm doing it for myself first. But yeah, it might actually benefit others as well, much more than anything that I used to do in the past, because now I'm doing it from my deep, deep core, from this depth of me that only I can bring to the world. And so for me, that's key. And this is one thing. So again, if I can say it shortly, trust yourself, trust your intuition, and act on it in a gentle and healthy way. And that's it. For me, I really have to accentuate the healthy and the gentle. And so, but each and every one of us needs to define that for themselves. What is healthy for them? What gentle means for them? And it really truly needs to be gentle. And they can be small steps. But if we just keep moving forward day by day, just one step at a time, I think in a couple of years we're going to definitely see some really good results. And then, like I said, by then, if we've been acting on our intuition, then we're going to trust it even more. We're going to build self-trust, self-awareness, we're really going to get strong inside. And that's, to me, is what matters the most. And the last episode in the part 2 of our top 10 countdown of 2020 is, of course, number 1. Taking the time to feel into it before making decisions. Always a great reminder about the wisdom that we all have. Let's try to remember it. I believe that everyone can raise their awareness and have a better insight into themselves and into the situations they face. Doing this can enable us to avoid the suffering that comes as a result of making bad decisions. For this episode, I'm using a recording from one of my live group calls where I talk about the importance of taking the time to feel into things before making any decisions. It's basically about how to make better decisions and about knowing how to act in your best interest. Yeah, but there's just one thing to mention. You're in charge. We are in charge. We are in charge of each and every situation, even when it looks like we're not. Even when it feels like we're not. So, how much are we going to be true to ourselves in each and every moment? I mean, it's not a big deal if we do a little bit of, this and that, a little bit of, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but it can build up easily from small thing to a bigger thing, then another, oh, and then we're just too overwhelmed to even think about anything because we've just crossed ourselves, I guess. So, how to stop that? We could call this feeling into it. Before even saying that we're going to consider it, even. It's almost like claiming this sacred space, this time and space we created for ourselves, even if it's 5 seconds, of just allowing ourselves to feel into it before we start thinking. If we can do that each and every time, that would in itself solve the problem and even unravel all those past mistakes, we can call them, or crossing our own boundaries. So we would be able to correct the past and act in our best interest in the present. Acting in our best interest. Again, what that feels like, what that looks like, and again, what it feels like and what it looks like, and to have the discernment to stop before making decisions and feeling into it. And then all else can come into play. If we get angry, we can easily express it. If it doesn't feel right, we can just say, well, this doesn't feel, or I don't feel called to do this, or, or whatever. But everything else comes after this first, stopping and feeling into it, and then making that decision afterwards. It's about allowing ourselves to do that for ourselves. And we can do that in any given moment. There's not a situation, anytime, any day, where we need to, even if they say, you have 3 seconds. No, I have more. I have as much as I give myself. So this is something that we need to be aware that we have the freedom to do that for ourselves. And that we can allow that, and that's putting ourselves first. That's true self first and caring for ourselves and meeting our own needs and seeing if doing this will benefit us or not. Does it feel good? Maybe it doesn't feel good. Anyway, just taking that time is important. Of course, we all know that it's good to stop and think before making a decision. We all know that it's good to take the time that's needed, especially before making any major decisions. The question would be, Why don't we do it? Why don't we always take the time to really see how we feel about something before making that decision? Why don't we make an extra effort to take that time, especially when someone is trying to pressure us into making an instant decision? Why do we give in to that pressure? Do we think that we have no choice? Or that there is just one option? Are we scared that we're going to pass up on a one time opportunity or that we're never going to get a better one? What drives our behavior in moments like these? This is where the energetic perspective answers most of these questions and gives us a clearer picture. For example, whenever I'm faced with any situation or when I'm being offered an opportunity and need to make a decision about it, I stop and look at four different things. First, I tune into the energy of the opportunity that's being presented. Then I tune into the energy of the person that's presenting it, or the energy of the people that it is tied to. Then I tune into the energy of the possible outcome of that opportunity in the case of me saying yes. And of course, I also tune into how I feel about it, meaning I tune into my own energy and see if I'm restless or composed. If I find that I'm restless, I normally delay the decision until I'm settled and more peaceful and centered. And then I take the time to really feel into it. But what if this really is a once in a lifetime opportunity and I've now missed out on it because I delayed my decision and didn't give an answer right away, and now this opportunity is gone? In my experience, whenever I made any decisions from a peaceful, centered place and took the time to really feel into it and then said, no, thank you, I found that another even better opportunity eventually came along. Because I honored myself and held for the best for myself and took that time, I got rewarded. So, in general, if we have any questions that need answering, we can always tune into the energy of things to get a precise answer. For any answers about why we wouldn't take the time to feel into things before making any decisions, we need to tune into the energies that were surfacing in those moments when we found ourselves restless and in reaction. This provides a lot of insight into what was going on and why it was going on. Try it for yourself to see how it works. Okay, this is it. This concludes our top 10 countdown of 2020 on the BEnergyAware Podcast. Looking forward to creating more episodes in 2021. If you like this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, get in touch with me with any thoughts or suggestions. Message me on Instagram at BEnergyAware or through my website, BEnergyAware.com. And please share this podcast with your friends. I look forward to being here with you again in the new year.